Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalron, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look at survival hunters in BFA. I've been out on the forums and I heard that this recent patch for beta might be one of the finalized big drops that we will see in BFA. Now, whether that's true or not is not something I can confirm 100%, but it would be about that time. The game is coming to a point where it just might be released. The pre-patch is only a few months away. So if this is a final build, if this is the final changes that we'll see for the beta, I don't want to start talking about classes as if they're finalized, because I still feel like there's room for more things to be added. Primarily Fury Warriors, I'd love to see a Fury Warrior change, but without thinking of it as a finalized build and me talking about it in a finalized way, I do want to address a specialization and a class that I think a lot of you guys will enjoy. I've seen a lot of people talking about demonology warlocks and warlocks of all kinds, but not nearly as many people are talking about the class I want to talk in today's video. Now, I've covered hunters in general with first impression, but I really want to touch down on survival hunter. The reason why I want to talk about survival hunters is because we have a very interesting phenomenon what Blizz wants to do. Currently in Legion, and I think a lot of you can agree, survival is a very unique specialization, like Outlaw, in a way that not a lot of people play it. Ask yourself this: how many survival players do you know in the game? Okay, now narrow it by asking how many good ones do you know. Good survival hunters are kind of hard to come by. But what's happening to survival in BFA is a very interesting phenomenon, and the only thing I can really compare it to is to Star Wars. Star Wars is something that was originally really picked up by the nerdy crowd, everybody who was into the sci-fi and the idea of an amazing space opera, but it wasn't for everybody, kind of like how survival is. It's for a select few, and those few have especially good taste in specializations. But what's happening to the specialization in BFA is that it's becoming more popular. Like Star Wars in present day and age, it's a cool thing to like Star Wars and be nerdy. So as the normies are discovering the specialization all anew, the old school players are reeing in contempt. But that is what's happening to survival, and I want to spotlight the specialization. On top of it, a lot of people have been asking me about new mains, looking for a new character, a new class to play, and I do want to spotlight Survival Hunter in particular, just because I end up playing it a lot on BFA as of recent, and I really love it. I like everything about it, and I just see so much potential with the specialization. First of all, we have to cover what is new in terms of the gameplay. Survival Hunters in BFA compared to Legion have a lot simpler rotation. I feel that in Legion, the best way to describe survival is maintaining more than one buff that don't really line up together, maintaining damage over time abilities that sometimes desync unless you have insane amounts of haste, and having just a specific rotation where if you just mess up one ability, it feels like all of your damage is out of the window. In Legion, survival is a very complicated specialization with rotations and parts of rotations that feel like they're bumping against each other, which doesn't create for smooth gameplay and very punishing, but with a lot of versatility if played perfectly. In BFA, however, they're a lot simplified, a lot less headache, a lot less thinking about the abilities, a lot less need to be perfect on a dot, which gives you a little bit more freedom. Your talents add a bit of creative freedom, and the only thing you're limited by is GCD. Baseline, the specialization doesn't feel like you need specific stats in order to start feeling comfortable and feeling good to play, which I think is one of its major aspects that is positive. So what's the big difference between rotations? And this is going to be a little bit of a while to explain Survival Hunter rotation in Legion, but you maintain a buff called Machnathal. You want to have 4 stacks to that. At the same time, you want to maintain a buff for your Mongoose Bite. You want to stack that as high as you can with Burst. You want to maintain dots like Serpent Sting. You want to maintain Lacerate, which is your bleed. You want to maintain your Caltrops at all times that are under the enemy, and Explosive Trap when you got it. That's a lot of buffs and debuffs to maintain. And the worst part is, unless you have insane amounts of haste for your specialization to be able to maintain all those buffs and really just etch the most amount of damage, because most of your damage comes from your Mongoose Bite, but without all these buffs and debuffs rolling, a good chunk of your damage is gone. If you're not able to maintain all those buffs properly, you really, the rotation feels like spinning plates. It's too confusing, and most players just look at it and say, well, I could just play Beast Mastery or Marksmanship, and they're way easier specializations. They deal more damage than survival in most cases, and you don't have to be worrying about being up in melee. But in BFA, it's a little bit different. You just maintain Serpent Sting as a dot, you throw a grenade once in a blue moon whenever that's up, you use Kill Command in order to build focus, and you dump all your focus with Raptor Strike. Simple. Instead of having multiple buffs and debuffs to maintain. Simple. If you want to add some kind of gameplay like Mongoose Bite stacking, you can, but instead of adding your Mongoose Bite as an extra ability, it will simply replace your Raptor Strike. So you're basically not changing your base rotation of 4 abilities. You can use some talents in order to make certain abilities like your Wildfire Bomb have extra effects, or maybe just empower your damage over time abilities and your ranged abilities rather than your melee abilities. So you have more than one option of how you want to build yourself through talents. So the best part of the specialization is baseline. It's pretty simple to pick up, and then from there it just gives you so much openness and freedom to how you want to play. If you're still not convinced, let's talk about AoE, because a lot of us like to look at big ass numbers. When you get a bunch of enemies together in a dungeon and just want to blow them up, these are the biggest differences between the specializations. In Legion, you drop both of your traps, your caltrops and your explosive, and then you butchery and a carve, and you get this massive burst of damage for a short moment, and then you kind of just wait. You kind of just AFK. Or if you respect to carve, I guess you can carve over and over and over, but butchery ends up being a way better talent for you to play with. And that's all you really do. So past that, that's it. That's one thing that Survival is really good at, is burst AoE. But if you want to continue a rotation where you keep pressing buttons, it's not really specialization that facilitates that. In BFA, however, you have more than one way to AoE, and I tried multiple different talents. There are multiple ways you can play. If you want to play the whole butchery, kind of like a warrior, going in and whirlwinding a bunch of enemies, you can. But Survival has another way of playing. First of all, your Wildfire Bomb is an interesting AoE ability, where it will hit your enemy and it'll put a dot on them, but also, depending on which trajectory you hit the enemy, from you flying to them, it'll make a line. And in that line, it'll do a conal ability that will explode and dot up enemies from there on. So if you position yourself in the proper way, then you can get the most amount of players. This will give you a lot more opportunity to be maybe at range or at melee and kind of shift your way around depending on how mobs are stacked up, and choose your targets carefully in order to get the most amount of enemies, which I find super exciting and super fun. And I honestly cannot wait to see Survival Hunters running around groups trying to find the best angle to throw the bomb on. And then there's the other AoE build, where you just go for butchery, you go for a Wildfire Bomb infusion, you wait until you get the RNG of shrapnel, you throw your bomb, kind of like how you would try to coat as many people as possible, run in, butchery, a bunch of bleed damage going. Another combination that you have with the talent infusion for Wildfire Bomb is the poison infusion. You just basically put a poison on everybody, throw the bomb, it'll do a little bit of AoE pulsating damage to each other and refresh the poisons. That's also another fun way to AoE. I feel like there's just more than one way to play the specialization, and talents allow you so many ways. On Legion, you really have one play style, and it's just kind of weird and sometimes might feel a little bit awkward for a lot of players to get into. But I feel like in BFA, there's just so much creative freedom. I feel like, why wouldn't anybody want to play this? One thing I will admit though, in Legion, Survival Hunters have a way better version of traps and the usage of traps. There's a waylay effect in the game, where if you set the trap for a little bit, then the trap will waylay, as in it'll have an extra effect after sitting down for a while, especially useful in PvP and useful sometimes in some PvE situations. So the way you would basically end up playing it is you would set up a trap, and then you would basically want to set, you don't want to drop it right on top of a player or an enemy, and then once it sets and you'll see a ring around it, you want to guide the enemy through it. When you guide the enemy through it, it'll activate the extra effect to it. Some of the effects are with Explosive Trap, the enemy will miss their next 2 auto attacks. Tar Trap, I think it'll root enemies in place for a little bit. And with Freezing Trap, it'll function like a stun. It'll basically won't break for 6 seconds that it's up on the enemy. So when they get trapped with a Freezing Trap Waylay Trap, it doesn't count it as a stun because it's not technically a stun. It just won't break to damage, so you can really go ham at the enemy once you get them trapped up. That whole concept is completely gone in BFA. For a few Survival Hunters, mostly in the PvP variety, this is kind of a deal breaker. To be able to play with your traps is something that made the specialization a little bit more interesting, a little bit more unique. You were the trap master. This is one of those bittersweet things of learning how to play a difficult specialization, struggling through it. Maybe the specialization is not on par with its other specs, brother and sister specializations, but when the player takes the opportunity, takes the time to truly learn how to play a difficult specialization, the experience that you get, the reward that you get out of playing it properly it's way up there, man. It feels really good when you pull off some crazy moves that only your specialization can, that nobody really expected you to. So with that being said, If you're a survival hunter main right now, you might want to be looking into another specialization. If you played the survival specialization for the sake of difficulty, for the sake of unique playstyle, it might not be for you. If you're somebody who avoided survival or never really played in the past, it's definitely a specialization you should be checking out in BFA. And is going to be a specialization that I am personally going to be playing in BFA. Now, in some weird sense, as an Outlaw Rogue player, my specialization isn't really widely as played as Assassination and Subtlety. So, on some sense, I can kind of relate. But if for whatever reason Blizzard decided to take out the roll the bones mechanic, the RNG, and everything that people hated about Outlaw and bring that into BFA, I would be a little bit sour because this is the playstyles that I played because they were this difficult, because there's the RNG, because there's a little bit of that, I guess, steep hill of entry. But in a long run, logically, I feel like I would be happy that more people are playing my specialization. I like changes in video games in general, and if they were to completely radically change Outlaw and bring back Combat Rogue, it will be a little bit begrudging, and I would say that the playstyle of Outlaw Rogue, to me personally, is a better playstyle, a lot more fun playstyle, a lot more difficult playstyle. But if more people are playing Outlaw Rogue as a basically Combat Rogue, would it really be that bad of a thing? I think overall I would be able to adapt to changes, and I like new things in general. So this change, I am happy, mostly because it's a new change. But a lot of you guys will enjoy it because it's a change that accommodates a lot more players, simplifies the specialization, and makes it a lot more consumer friendly, I guess, in a way. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I would like to hear some of you guys' thoughts on Hunter. If we are in the finalized few patches for BFA, with the game being, you know, closer to completion, these are the major changes that will come out, then this is definitely one of the classes that I will play in BFA simply for specialization of survival alone. I feel like it offers a very unique playstyle, a very fun playstyle, and overall I think it's a good change from the specialization that we had in Legion. Some things will be lost, but I feel like in the long term it is going to be a great spec. As always, likes are very much appreciated, subscribing is very much recommended, and hitting the notification bell for the channel is almost required. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Is Survival Hunter something you're willing to look forward to? Or if any specific specializations you guys are excited about, anything specific you want me to cover in great detail just by spec alone, I can always do that on the channel as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one.